I always say that we probably are one of the few sectors that would love to be put out of business because there are no refugees in the world, right? We would love one day to wake up and be like, well, there's no more work to be done because there is no violence, there is no persecution. People aren't being forced to leave their homes. But every year it seems that we come and we recognize this day. It just seems that the numbers would get more and more staggering, more and more unbelievable. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees just released a report last week that said in the world today, there are over 100 million people who had been forced to flee their homes because of fear of persecution or violence. Well, the Taliban took control again, and many of our friends, many of our allies there, many people who helped the American mission, helped with the military, helped support the U.S. military, helped to bring democracy and human rights and women's rights and equality to that country, were literally faced with persecution. And the U.S. government decided that they had a moral obligation to help evacuate people. Obviously, we know not everybody who needed to be evacuated was. This country did evacuate roughly 76,000 Afghan nationals into this country as a sign of our responsibility to those individuals. And because again, refugee resettlement, as we've said for decades, this office has been open since 1979. We always say that refugee resettlement, the success of this office is a community supported endeavor, but I think we've learned that even more so over the last 5 years of what a presidential administration who has certain animus towards refugees and really immigration broadly can have on our work. Also, the impact of world events where we're called to step up to the plate and welcome people in the volume in which we were asked to this year. So both, we seem to be both caught in a position where we're seen as a critical need, providing human dignity and safety and support to people looking for safety coming into this country. But we also seem to be also sort of a political whipping boy at the same time, right? So it's kind of a weird dichotomy we seem to stand in. But again, we can only stand in that space because of supporters like you all.
My name is Asiyah Sarwari. I actually was born in Afghanistan, but we became refugees when I was 2 years old, and we were resettled, came to Georgia as refugees when I was 5 years old. I grew up, went to Clarkston High School, Agnes Scott College, and then I went and I worked at IRC right out of college in the job development program. And the only reason I left was to get some legal experience before law school. So after law school, I went straight to Afghanistan, graduated in May and left in June. And I worked there in various capacities, on and off, I guess before law school too, from 2003 until about 2017 or so. And came back because of the security situation, and I had a small son. It was bad then, of course it's much worse now. And then when all of the things happened, I'm an immigration attorney now by training and specialty. When all of the things happened in Afghanistan, I still have family there now, extended family. When everything happened, I think I was just fielding a lot of immigration questions from Afghans, Americans. How can I help my former coworkers? How can I bring my family over? It's so unsafe. And I think we were on a virtual panel together when I was just asked to come and see if there's any room for me to help with IRC's immigration program.
My name is Naser. I'm an APA Casework Supervisor, so APA stands for Afghan Placement and Assistant. I joined IRC last year, almost 9 months or so. And I came to the United States 11 years ago. I came here literally with $100 in my pocket. And I started from zero with no language, with anything like that. But I had faith in myself, to this country. And thanks to the agency that helped me 11 years ago to build my life and go through all this, to learn language and support my family back to Afghanistan, because I came by myself, and put a goal to achieve it, and thank God I made it. But it was too many things. I faced many challenges, but this country is full of opportunity if you use it. If you put hard work to achieve your goal, you can make it. So and then in 2012, I started working with I got a job working as a mobile or on-call with the U.S. military. I traveled like more than 15 states around the United States, and we taught Afghan culture to the Marines and Army, different levels. But we taught Afghan culture for the pre-deployment training. If anyone familiar with the military, so we did the pre-deployment training, Afghan culture pre-deployment training, and lastly, as soon as I got my citizenship in 2016, I joined a company called Mission Essential. I went, deployed to Afghanistan as a contractor and worked with the U.S. military again as an Afghan culture advisor and interpreter, linguist. And so I get back to the United States end of 2019. Then thank God I got married and took up my life. And in 2021, I joined again the company that called Mission Essential that we work for on the evacuee, Afghan parole in Quantico, Virginia. So I started work there for a few months. Then I got this amazing offer to start to working with the RC families.
We know that right now there's a lot of media or there was, in that cycle around the Afghan evacuation process. Now we hear a lot about Ukrainians. We haven't really seen that many Ukrainians, and maybe you can speak to a little bit of what you're hearing, because you didn't mention it, but you also speak Russian, so you are also engaging with some of our Ukrainian brothers and sisters who are already here. But again, I mentioned earlier, we welcome 250 people from all over the world, some of them waiting years to come right through the process, like our Syrian brothers and sisters who were not allowed to come in during the previous administration, right? So how is that one? What are those other communities? What are you hearing? How is their resettlement looking compared to the work we're doing with our Afghan evacuee?
Definitely about the Ukrainian, we received a call, several call, and also we have some Ukrainian parole families walk into the office. So we have a Uniting Ukrainian hotline number, also we're providing to them, and definitely maybe next year we can have those, because we have reunification team that are working to reunify those families that still back in the countries, all over the world, not only Afghan. And we have that team installed, and they're working on the reunification process. And also we have a mental health team that working on the mental of the new arrivals, because this is very important. There are lots of emotions and stress that the people survived and made it through those difficulty and came to the Howell airport and then to the military camp. Because I start from there. I start from the scratch. I saw people the trauma and the mental health issues.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we have the amazing team, mental health team. They already working on with the families. Whenever they realize that family needs mental health, we have caseworker assigned to mental health and reunification team. And yes, we work not only with the APA, but all the regular placement clients that are arriving to the office.
So, one thing, I just want you to help us all understand is, normally, again, a lot of our supporters have been with us a long time. They're like, well, yeah, normally, folks are on their way to citizenship, right? They're here from day one. They know where they're headed. How has this been different with the Afghan evacuee response?
Well, unfortunately, the Afghans who were evacuated were not treated like normal refugees, even though they are refugees. They came in with with a temporary status, so basically humanitarian parole. They're legally only allowed to be here for 2 years. Other refugees and every other group who have come here from evacuation process, the Kosovar Albanians, Sudanese, Cubans, Liberians, they all have something called an Adjustment Act, or they came in with refugee status. The problem with the Afghans is they have no such protections. So they've got to go through the asylum process in the US. Or they have to see if they qualify for the special immigrant visa status, which is for people who directly worked with the US military, US government in Afghanistan for a certain period of time. The problem is the asylum process in the US is awful. There's two stages to it. There's an affirmative asylum process, which is you apply with USCIS, and then if you get approved, great, you've got asylum status, and then you're treated like a refugee, so after a year you can get your green card, which is your permanent residence. If you are not approved by the affirmative asylum process, you're referred to defensive, which means you're referred to immigration court. And the immigration court, the asylum system, it basically means the government has decided they are going to put you in removal proceedings. And in Atlanta, our approval rate is less than 3%. There are judges, immigration court, I don't know how familiar people are, but if you get referred to immigration court, the immigration judges, I've seen it with my own eyes, will say, I know that you're likely going to get killed or persecuted or raped when you get home to your home country, you still do not qualify for asylum. So it was bad before, under the previous administration, the asylum laws, the case law has gotten so bad that I don't know if I would have been able to qualify for asylum when we came, and there was, very much persecution in Afghanistan against my family. That said, there is temporary protected status that the Biden administration has finally enacted. Unfortunately, that's still temporary. The only thing that allows you to do is be here on a temporary basis. You get employment authorization, but you can't reunite with your family. You can't travel. Well, I guess you could travel, but again, with no Afghan passport, what are you going to do? And then, whenever the administration decides that they don't want you here anymore, they can end temporary protected status and send everybody back because they've decided that the country is safe enough. Which, if anybody is familiar with the Haitian crisis, that's what happened to all of them. There are people here who have been here for decades, members of society, nurses, doctors, studied in the US, got sent home, got sent to Haiti, and were not able to come back.
This was something I remember when we talked about this back in August, September, while we were still kind of going back and forth from the base. It was always like, they're going to pass an Afghan Adjustment Act, don't worry about it. I didn't want to be the cynic, but I was like, we need to plan that we don't. So we're lucky to welcome you now, because everybody just said it was going to happen, but we don't see it happening, right? Like it's not been introduced into the Congress.
And it's been shot down a few times by, it was supposed to be part of Ukrainian humanitarian, and they took it out at the last minute. But I think long term, if you think about it, getting the Adjustment Act will help legal status. So, because if we don't have that, even if we are able to get them permanent status for half of the people, that's still over 30,000 people who don't have status in the US. So what are we expecting them to do? How are they going to integrate properly in this world?
And as we were talking about earlier, right, that also means kids can't go to college, so we're losing a lot of intellectual and what they call brain waste, right? I mean, a lot of smart, driven individuals. I mean, there's whole stories of people who were evacuated from Kabul University. In Bangladesh, they were in university, women, that if you're not in status, you can't go to university, especially in Georgia, right? You don't have a proper status, quote unquote. And like you also mentioned, if the time runs out or they do apply for asylum and it's not granted, you can stay here and be out of status, but that also means you can't get proper work authorization. So are we also forcing people into working under the table jobs, which leads to possible trafficking and other things, right? So it's a real mess that could really be solved by a simple Afghan Adjustment Act. Like you said, which there's precedent. There was an Iraqi Adjustment Act. Before that, there was a Cuban Adjustment Act. There have been adjustment acts throughout. So there's precedent. So again, why would the U.S. go through this effort to evacuate 76,000 people at a generational historic event, yet not provide long-term solutions, right? So hopefully, again, if you have connections to your Congress people, elected officials, we've been asking for it. Leadership, we are, our job is to look forward. What are we looking forward into the near and long term so we can continue to be ready to support when we're called on to do so? I mean, some of the things we're talking about here at leadership level, is we know that, I mentioned earlier, our budget went from 6 million to 20 million. We know that come October 1st, about 40% of our federal funding will no longer be there. So that 40% drop in your budget, when you've hired and trained such incredible people, both that will still need these services, like we were mentioning earlier, even if we get people through the asylum process, then they're going to be in a position to get adjustment of status, and then they can start actually helping try to bring those lost loved ones they left behind, right? So this is a multi-year need from a legal perspective. We know with 100 million people displaced in the world, 65 million refugees, more and more people are going to need protections, and to be able to staff up, 240% increase in staffing, that we hire, we train, to have to lose that over budget reasons is something we are just fighting urgently to hold on to. If you aren't signed up for our newsletter, I really want to encourage you, because they take all these great stories and then they put it in a form that we can let community members know. Because again, we really do believe this is a community supported program, and we believe we owe it to you to help tell the story of how your support is making an impact in people's lives. And just want to thank you all for being here on World Refugee Day, which I think also is telling that it's on the day after Juneteenth, in this spirit of human rights and the continual struggle for freedom and equity, and creating a world we all want to live in, right? One free of violence, free of persecution, one where everybody's human potential can flourish. And that's why we're here. And we thank you for being here with us.